15th Street, full block from Houston Avenue. So they all kind of congregated close to that gate.
So that's the area of town where the Hispanic community grew.
Yeah.
And over time, you mentioned a boarding house. Were there other businesses in that neighborhood that grew up over time?
Yeah. There were other men who had families that didn't work at Texaco, had grocery stores and barbershops all right there, and close to that neighborhood. And even the local Catholic church started right there in the 200 block of 15th Street. It's in there.
What was the name of the church at the time?
Guadalupe Church.
It was also Our Lady of Guadalupe?
Yeah.
Okay. And that was, again, say that again for me, what 100 block was that?
Well, see, started out in 1927, which is about the time, these families started working there. Corner of Houston Avenue and 15th Street,
Okay.
which would have been 100 block of 15th Street.
All right.
I remember when my dad built that house. He went from the boarding house, he bought the lot, but he bought 2 lots, I think. So the back lot, he was actually growing fruit and vegetables in the back lot, and he had a cow, and he had chickens and rabbits,
Really?
and a big yard. And in the front lot, and that's where he got all his friends to put these blocks. I got pictures where they put me on a horse and took a picture of me by the window there. They put these blocks there, and it's just a wood frame house. A wood frame house. And there was no bathroom. It was just an outhouse in the back. And my mother had wires where she used to clean the wires to hang the clothes.
Right.
She had a washing machine on the back porch. And I remember the kitchen where she would cook and make all our meals, lunches. And it was just all wood. The floor, the frame, the windows, it was all wood.
Was this a house your father built himself, or did he contract with someone else to build it?
He did. He got his friends to help him build it. And that's how he did it.
And is that how most of your neighbors built their houses?
Because all your friends and neighbors, they had to help each other to survive.
Yeah.
When they had a project.
A lot of those
And they
families. Go ahead.
So we all became like relatives. We became close. We got to know their mothers and fathers. Everybody got to know each other.
So it was a tight-knit community and everybody helped one another.
Yeah, a lot of those men that worked at Texaco and lived in that area came from the same little towns or near those little towns that they originally came from. So they kind of knew their families back in Mexico, who they were, who their grandparents were. So when they came over here and lived in this little community, they all knew each other by family names.
Right. You mentioned that your grandparents had a boarding house in San Antonio, and then they moved their boarding house here.
It was our parents.
Your parents.
Our mother.
Your mother.
Mother's side.
Oh, okay.
And then what happened was, there would have been my grandfather. He was sick and he needed treatment from a doctor in San Antonio. So they had to vacate. They went back to San Antonio. And then from San Antonio, they went back to Mexico. And both of them died in Mexico. And they're buried in back of a church.
Yeah.
They were still doing that.
So was there a lot of going back home to the old country trips so many times a year, or was that just
I think that would have been a
unusual?
hardship.
That
That would have been a hardship.
Yeah.
Because you have to take a train. You have to take a train, from Beaumont to Houston to San Antonio, and then cross the border at Eagle Pass. That's what the documentation shows. Eagle Pass.
Yeah, they didn't have real good highways like they have now.
Right.
It's a 2-lane road.
And it probably would have been pretty expensive to take that train.
If you were
ride.
lucky to have a car.
Mhm.
So coming here was permanent. It was not with the idea that I'm going back. It was a permanent idea that I'm going to spend the rest of my life here in this town here. I'm going to stay here. I'm not going back.